So please stay in touch with us. Please follow our LinkedIn page, follow our website to see what is coming up. Also on our page, which is located at nphd.org, you will find an archive of our past workshops as well. So definitely check those out, especially if you are a new nonprofit organization who is looking to start figuring things out, has a specific topic that you're curious about. And our LinkedIn community is live and active. We'd love to hear from you there. And we also provide live free expert support that I'll tell you about momentarily. The workshops that are already scheduled on the calendar are listed here, including Harnessing AI for Good, a better way to get your board to fundraise, which will hopefully be me speaking in a clearer voice, and ethical storytelling. And again, discretionary workshops are going to be populated. We have a number of those that will be coming up very early in the new year. Uh, Last but not least, we really are a help desk. We have specialists in fundraising, promotion, legal, and nonprofit leadership and governance that are here to answer your specific questions. We really recommend that you start by watching a couple videos, getting yourself familiar with the topic that we want to ask questions about so that we can really make use of your specific questions in your specific time. At NPHD, you will see a button to request help. Don't hesitate to do it. Our experts are here. We are excited to help you, and we look forward to hearing from you. Without any further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Laura Cohen and Rosemary Osman, who are going to speak about our topic today.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. My name is Rosemary Ostman, and I am the founder and CEO of Rosecom. We are a strategic communications firm that's been around for about 21 years. And we work with clients from all walks of life, but a good part of what we do and why we're here today is focused on nonprofits of all shapes and sizes. So we work with those nonprofits to make sure they are telling their most compelling stories so that they can achieve their objectives. So I'm really excited to be here with you today and to introduce you to my colleague, Lara.
Hi, thank you, Rosemary. Hi, everyone. I'm Lara Cohn. I have about 30 years experience in the communications industry, working in all facets from media to public relations. And I've worked one-on-one with nonprofit help desk clients over the last few years, maybe some of you on this call, to help cultivate their stories using a variety of channels to share their news. Thank you again for joining us.
And before we jump into the actual presentation and what we're planning to cover, I would love for this to be as interactive as possible. So feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat, which some of you already are. And if you have attended one of our sessions before, I would love to hear that too. I see mostly new names. But would love to hear from those who have been with us before. We do always make this current, so there's some new information here, but also love to know when we're welcoming people back. So what we plan to cover today, this is all about storytelling and making sure that you are using storytelling to reach new audiences. Something that we hear from new and emerging nonprofits is they feel like they don't have a compelling story yet, or that they're not newsworthy. And we want to use the next hour to help you understand that you do have a great story to tell, and it is newsworthy. So the first thing we'll do is talk about why stories matter. Why do we stop and take the time to think about the stories that we want to tell? We'll talk about how to craft the most engaging messages to reach those audiences. Then I'm going to talk to you about something called the PESO model, which really just helps you think holistically about all of the communications channels that you have at your disposal so that you are optimizing your impact when you are putting your stories out into the world. And then finally, Lara will go over some real life nonprofit help desk clients and the impact that we've made on behalf of those organizations to, again, hopefully encourage you to see that you can do the same. Okay, so let's start with a poll question, because again, we want you to engage with us and to be interactive. So when you were thinking about an elevator pitch or pitching your story to the media, what do you think is most important? To define the problem and to get people to believe in the problem that you're looking to solve with data
Wrong one.
points? Oh, it's the wrong poll question.
It was, yes, there. I switched it. They were in reverse order on my screen. Sorry about that, everyone.
So back to what I was saying, the poll question we intended was, what's most important to come first? Having those data points to prove that there is a problem that your organization is solving, or to engage people with a human interest story to get them to understand who the beneficiary is of the work that your nonprofit does. So for example, if you are focused on hunger, a data point might be 1 in 3 college students faces food insecurity. Is it more important to grab people with that fact, or to come in and tell them a story using a name of someone who struggles to focus on school because they're hungry all the time? I think we have enough answers. Looks like we have a good number.
Yeah,
And
67.
it's interesting because we have almost split down the middle. So we can end the poll and share the results. Both elements are really important when it comes to storytelling, because if someone doesn't believe in what you're telling them, they're not ready to care about it. So you're right that both are important, and it's right now it looks like it's about, the proof points are about 45% to having the character driven narrative is 55%. So almost down the middle. They are both important. And if you had asked this question of us 10 years ago, we would have said, make them believe in it first, and then they're ready to care about it. But what we've seen over the last few years, with everything being so distracted, people focused on so many different channels, we have seen a flip of that. And we've actually had journalists and editors say to us, don't bore me with the data, hit me with the character first. The character is what it will go into that headline, and that's what people click on. Once we have their attention with that character, then we can focus on the facts. And we think that that flip is really important as you think about your storytelling strategy. To put a finer point on why people and human interest stories are so important, I'm sure all of you are focused on fundraising. You are aware of this basic tenet of fundraising, that people are inclined to give to people, not inclined to give to organizations. So that could be someone in your development department, it could be one of your trustees, it could be the story you tell about the people that are benefiting from the work that your nonprofit is doing. So for us, this is a really important foundation for the work that we are going to do and talk about today, is just always remembering that people want to give to people. So let's talk about why stories matter. You can probably guess, as someone who has been in this business for 30 years, I have a journalism degree, I'm a big reader, I've always loved stories, but I've never stopped to ask myself, why? Why do I love a good story? And that's what I want to talk about now. There's actually neuroscience research that shows something goes on in the brain. There's activity in the brain when you are hearing a great character-driven narrative. Those stories first cause distress, and your brain releases cortisol, and that's what gets your attention. And then once you hear sort of that hero journey narrative in a story, you hear about that character going through that journey, then your brain releases a very powerful hormone called oxytocin. And when that happens, when someone is hearing that story and their brain is having that reaction, they are more inclined to trust the person who is telling them that story. They are more inclined to be empathetic to what the speaker is saying. And they are more motivated, because of that trust and that empathy, to cooperate and actually to change their thinking and their behavior. So this research, which was done by a college professor in California named Paul Zak, showed that when your brain produces that oxytocin, you're more likely to give, and the amount of oxytocin that your brain produces dictates the amount that you're willing to give. So before we play this video, I've got the word generosity up on the slide here. And I'm curious to hear if the participants in our session today have been reading about what people are calling the generosity crisis. That we as a nation are facing a crisis where fewer and fewer households are giving to nonprofits every year. The number has actually dropped by 50%. 50% fewer households are writing checks to nonprofits from 2000 to 2016. That is shocking. And there are a lot of reasons why, but one of the reasons why is that we are seeing a decline in trust. Younger people are less likely to trust institutions, whether that's government, corporations, or even nonprofits. And that to me is quite stunning, that they don't want to write that check necessarily because they don't trust organizations, which to me says there's an opportunity to tell stories that will help you build that trust and create that human connection between your organization and the people you are trying to reach, whether they are donors or other audiences. So I don't know if others have faced that crisis of generosity, but something that we're hearing about. I know donations have been way down in 2024. Of course, there are other economic factors that we can attribute that to as well. We've got a little video here from the person who did this research, Paul Zak, that I mentioned, which explains and actually shows you the video that he used in his research to measure what happens with your brain chemistry. So we'll show that video now.
Let's tell you a story about a little boy named Ben. Ben is 2.5 years old, and Ben has brain cancer. And Ben's really happy. He's happy because he's been through 2 rounds of chemo and radiation, and he feels good for once. He doesn't feel yucky, and his father's enjoying seeing Ben's happiness. But as the father tells the story of Ben and his cancer, the father's voice begins to break. And he says, it's very difficult to play with Ben because Ben thinks everything is wonderful, but I know something that Ben doesn't, that Ben's dying. And he talks about how difficult it is to play with Ben, knowing that in 3 or 6 months, Ben will be dead. And yet Ben is so happy, he's so beautiful. And so the father tries as hard as he can to enjoy Ben, to be joyful around Ben. But then he says in the middle of this short story that it's an amazing thing to know how little time one has left. And as he says that statement, he has merged himself with his son. It's as if the father himself is dying. So in my laboratory, we've studied this story extensively. What we found is that 2 primary emotions were elicited. One is distress, and the other is empathy. At the same time, when we asked people what they felt after the story was over, we really couldn't get very clear answers. So we began doing other studies on this story. So we took blood before and after, and we found that the brain produced 2 interesting chemicals. One is called cortisol, which focuses our attention on something important. So cortisol correlated with our sense of distress. So the more distress you felt, the more cortisol you released, and the more you paid attention to that stimulus. The second chemical release is called oxytocin, which is associated with care and connection and empathy. And oxytocin was correlated with people's sense of empathy. And the more oxytocin they released, the more empathic they felt towards Ben and his father. And we did something different after this experiment. We gave individuals a chance to share money with a stranger in the lab. And indeed, those who produced both cortisol and oxytocin were more likely to donate money generously to a stranger they couldn't see in the lab. In another experiment, we gave individuals a chance to donate money to a charity that works with children who are ill. And indeed, those who released oxytocin and cortisol donated money to this charity. In fact, the amount of oxytocin release predicted in both cases how much money people would share with a stranger or with charity. What we're seeing is that this narrative is changing behavior by changing our brain chemistry.
So you can see how not just talking about a nonprofit and its mission, but that was a true story of a young boy and his cancer journey and the way it was having an impact on his father and the amount of time that they had left together. And even turning it into an animation and sharing that story, not even seeing the actual people, but it was a real story, an authentic story, and it took you on an emotional journey so that you could empathize with the individuals that that nonprofit was serving. When you do that, you create that trust, that bond. It connects, stories forever since the beginning of humanity have connected humans to one another. I'm going to show you a real example from Rosecom's work. We do some work with the Committee to Protect Journalists, which is a very large global nonprofit that provides a number of services to protect journalists covering news in parts of the world where there is not press freedom. And one of the questions that CPJ gets a lot is, why are you covering people who don't have credentials, that don't work for an actual news organization? You're covering sometimes these citizen journalists in these small communities. And I don't understand that. They're not really journalists. And it's been a point of contention for them as it relates to their policy and their fundraising. And it was a question, when we media train them, it was a question we practiced a lot, to think about how can we answer this and do so credibly and not look like we have lost our focus or that we have mission creep or that we don't know how to choose who to protect. And one day when we were doing media training, our client came up with this answer on the spot during a mock interview, and it was really compelling. So I give you what we like to call Carrie's perfect answer to this question.
Let me unpack why I think that actually is the right approach, particularly in a time where we have, so many competing voices. Early on in my time at CPJ, I covered a case, a journalist in northeastern Congo who was a radio reporter. And it was a tiny, tiny community. All of the equipment was damaged that he had been using. And so what he would do is wake up every morning, ride his bike to the neighboring town, do his research, conduct his interviews, ride his bike back home, and then march through the streets of his community with a megaphone announcing the news. In 2015, that man was killed as a result of a story that he delivered. I don't believe that that person, a man with his bicycle and his megaphone, would necessarily fall into anyone's, rigid definition of, well, did he have a press pass? Was he working for an accredited outlet? Was he, a holder of a journalism degree? I think it's very easy to get caught up in credentials. But that person was performing an act of journalism. That person was conducting independent interviews. He was informing his community. He was trying to deliver a message. And, ultimately he was killed for it. So I think it's really important to remember that the virtue of a broader definition, or of at least allowing space for exploration of these cases, is that otherwise people like that, people doing the nitty gritty hard work of telling the truth, can fall through the cracks.
I don't know about you, but when she tells that story, I can visualize it. I can picture that village. I can picture the bicycle. I can picture the megaphone. And when she first told that story, I did not know where she was headed. I did not know that that person had been killed simply for their journalism, because the information that they were sharing threatened power. So she absolutely stopped me in my tracks. And I felt like I understood the people that they were protecting, and that I personally knew this man and felt much more connected to their mission. And I've shown this video now many times during different webinars and trainings, and it still hits me the same every single time. So what are the elements of a compelling story? It's all about that emotional connection. We talked about trust. We talked about empathy. That is what you are looking to do. You're looking to connect with someone on an emotional level so that they can identify with you or relate to the story. Also, when you tell a story that makes that true connection, it is more memorable. Something that Paul Zak said in that video, that when your brain releases cortisol and oxytocin, you're more likely to stay focused on the story and retain the information. And let's face it, in 2024, anything that we can do with information overload to get people to focus on what we're saying and to remember what we're saying, we should be trying. One thing about telling these stories is you do have to be willing to embrace your vulnerability, which is not always easy for everyone. So it's something that you really need to stop and think about aspects of your story that show vulnerability, that you are comfortable sharing, and practice it. Because without that vulnerability, you won't make that emotional connection. And then the last step here is go back and think about, after today, go back and think about how you pitch your story, how you tell your story. And think about rebuilding your pitch based on, am I telling the most compelling, character-driven, and when I say character, I mean real people, the real people that you are serving, or your real people on your staff, yourself included. Have I brought those characters into my narrative and told the story in the most compelling way to make this kind of connection with the people that I'm talking to? And then the peso model that I mentioned before. Lara and I have been in this business for the same period of time. And when we started in this business, it was all about what we call earned editorial, that top bubble you see in this model. That is pitching the media and having them cover your organization or including your expertise in their story because they believe you are newsworthy. And we all know that the media landscape has evolved and the number of opportunities for earned exposure continues to decline. We cannot be dependent just on having the local media cover us or even the national media cover us to get our message out. When Lara and I started in this business, if you could get covered by the New York Times or the Today Show, everyone would be talking about you that day. That doesn't happen anymore. And that's why this peso model is so important. Think about those stories that you think are worth pitching to the media and make sure you are telling them across all of your channels. And that's where the other bubbles come into play. If you do have a budget for paid media, think about how you're using these human interest stories across paid, your shared media, your social channels, your owned media. This is your website, your blog, your email campaigns, your even traditional mail campaigns. Really stop and think about all the different ways that you communicate and make sure that you are optimizing across all of those channels. The reason why is the news cycle has never been shorter. So even if you think you have a great newsworthy story to pitch, if something breaks in the media that distracts journalists, they're not going to cover your story that day. But if you are prepared to use all the other channels, you're less dependent on that. The other thing that I want to be very clear about is journalists, if you are trying to get media attention, journalists are looking at your channels. And I'm going to give you a really great example of a story we're working on this week. We work with a restaurant. We're in New Jersey. We work with a restaurant here in New Jersey. And the chef was interviewed by NJ Monthly to share a story in relation to The Bear, the TV show, if you've watched it. So someone at NJ Monthly wanted people to talk about the real life kitchen stories similar to The Bear. And the chef at our restaurant had a great story to tell. It was a completely vulnerable moment because it was a terrible story about how he was treated in an abusive way in a kitchen very early in his career. He shared that story. There's a segment on CBS Saturday morning, national news, called The Dish, and they feature prominent chefs from across the country. They decided they wanted to find someone in New Jersey. They ended up on that NJ Monthly article. Now, if we weren't doing local media coverage, they wouldn't have seen him. They found him there. Then they went digging and they found other examples of what he had been putting out himself. They were on his Instagram. They found an award he won for a festival in Martha's Vineyard recently, which also had a little bio on him. They took all of that into consideration and decided they wanted to feature him. So he is going to, on January 4th, if everything goes as planned, he will have that opportunity to be showcased as a chef on a national program. Again, if he weren't on Instagram and we weren't doing our job on our own channels, they might have said, this guy doesn't look all that interesting. So you really have to be thinking across all those channels and make sure you're making the most out of it. And then the last point I want to make here is, let's face it, the younger demographic, those young professionals who are quickly becoming donors, they're not looking at traditional media in the same way that we do. They are starting on social. In fact, I've been reading that the data for Google searches is going way down. They're starting on social media channels. They're not even going to search something on Google. They're starting directly on social. So if you make sure that you are telling the story you want across all your channels, you are more likely to get the attention of that younger demo.
Rosemary, I know there were a few questions, I think, some raising of hands that looked like popped up before I moved to the next poll question, if there were any we should be answering. Someone, Erica, is raising her hand.
Sure. Erica, did you put your question in the chat, or you want to? I'm now looking back because I was talking. I wasn't looking at the chat, but I'm looking back. You want to ask your question live?
I'm, excuse me. I just keep sitting here thinking about whether or not to include in the story many things that have happened to the person, like sexual assault, alcoholic parent, unrecognized neurodiversity, homelessness, or should the story focus more on the most moving aspect?
It's a great question. And it's something that we talk a lot about because people can't focus on too much information. So when we are crafting a story, we tend to try to think about 3 messages. What are the 3 things that I want to communicate? And I continue to bounce back to those 3 messages. There's been a lot of research around how many points can someone absorb, whether it's in a story that you're writing or a story that you're pitching or a presentation that you're making. So I would try to focus on 3, knowing that in general, people are looking for a reason to tune out, right? They're looking for a reason to delete that email and move on. So I would try to focus on 3, if that answers your question, and really think about, like, all those elements are really important, right? That when you talk about that individual and what they have been through, they're all important. But again, to someone who's just hearing it for the first time, what are the 3 elements of the story that are going to get their attention and engage them in the narrative?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that goes right into our next poll question, actually.
I'll keep reading the questions on the chat too to make sure.
Thank you. But yes, please interrupt if there's anyone urgent. So our next poll question is, do you have a repository of human interest stories at the ready? And I know some of you had already answered it when we launched it. I don't know if we can keep it going, but it was about 50-50 initially when you first joined the presentation, which is very interesting. So I think seeing what those human interest stories are in examples is a good way to see how we've worked with our nonprofit desk clients and how you can relate to their stories. So as I said, we've worked with a few nonprofit desk clients over the years to help them understand how to tell their stories, just like you've asked us here, and how to garner exposure. We gave them support and tools that they needed to show that it is achievable to do it for yourself. A lot of these are very small organizations, just like yourself. Some of them are just a few people. Some of them are a one-woman show. So they needed really an outsider to give them that perspective and confidence. And I will just go through a few of them here. I don't know if anyone is on the call. I didn't see some names, but if you are, say hi. So Expecting Relief, they are the logo on the left. They provide essentials such as diapers and food to families in Brooklyn. And we helped the founder, Vanessa, really establish her credibility in the community, helped her establish new partnerships, garner some local media. We also provided counsel on her social media pages and her website. And she, even at the beginning, was not able to take donations online or at events. So that was something that we pointed out to her was very important for her to look into doing. We helped her set that up, building her confidence, and we really are so happy to see, how far she's grown. She's expanded into different states, into Florida, and she's even lending her voice to advocacy issues. So just getting some outside help that we were able to provide her, again, looking at her own channels, looking at her shared channels where she needed to expand and increase her story. Intertwined Arts, they are a little bit right below her. That's a nonprofit. This was an interesting story because they were a nonprofit that brings weaving to people of all ages with disabilities. They're based in Manhattan. They were navigating a name change, and we helped them embrace the rebranding, which was both internally and externally. That included a new logo, updating all their communications channels, such as their website and their social media, announcing this new change to the board and their donors. We helped them see, they came to us and they were really not looking forward to this name change. They looked at it more of a negative. Everybody knows who we are. They know our name. They know our logo. This is not going to be positive for us, but we help them see that as a positive way to reintroduce themselves, both to the community, to potential donors. And we're happy to say that following working with us, they were able to secure an opportunity on WNBC, Channel 4 here in New York. So we really help them, again, from that outside perspective, see that sometimes a change is good. And then lastly, More Opera. So More Opera has, if you've been on any of our presentations, Cheryl Warfield, the professional opera singer, has joined us in some of our other presentations. She's the founder of More Opera, and they're a nonprofit that makes music and opera accessible to underserved communities throughout the New York City, the boroughs. So she's really come to us a few times for different needs, whether it's announcing a grant, announcing an award, and we've helped her to feel confident in telling her evolving story, to really find clarity in who she is and what her objectives are. I'd like to say that we taught her the skills on how to reach out to the media as well. She is now posting events to calendar listings herself, we're happy to see, and making inroads with local partners, with local politicians, giving her, again, that confidence that she has that story in herself and she's able to tell that. She's also a one-woman show. She now has interns that we helped her find through New York City to help her post to social media channels and making sure she is part of that New York City arts conversation. So even if you are one person and you might not have a budget, there are ways to find someone to help you. Students who are always looking for extra work, who might be more up on some of the latest social media trends, such as TikTok or on Reddit, and they could take your social media to the next level. Okay. So as I switch a little. So let's just take a deeper dive into one of the nonprofits that we recently worked with. They are Groove With Me. And like we talked before in the other slide, much of our work has been about small and emerging nonprofits, but this organization has been around for over a decade. And Abby McCreath is the founder and executive producer of Groove With Me, which is a New York City-based nonprofit offering free dance classes to local girls after school. It is there to help build their confidence, their achievement skills, really fuel their bright futures. A lot of these girls would be getting into trouble, honestly, if they were after school, if they had nowhere to go. So this is a free program to these girls in the community. Abby came to us because she was at a crossroads. She had gone through COVID, hitting some speed bumps and some challenges. She actually just signed a new lease on a great big new dance studio in Harlem, but then there was turnover in her board. There were shifts in her donor base. As Rosemary pointed out, donors have really decreased lately. And some of that stuff you might be experienced as well, that you understand it shook her confidence of how she could continue. And she was seeking counsel from us on how to reintroduce herself and Groove With Me to a national audience, as well as some local media outlets, in order to attract those new donors, new board members, staff, as well as new dance teachers, because those are volunteers in the community, and some of them had left as well. So we coached Abby on how to frame her message and assist her in telling her story. We put together some talking points, as one of the participants was asking, what are those 3 pillars that she needed to focus on, and really giving her the confidence. We videotaped her. We did a few mock interviews, also put together a video that she was able to use on her website. And again, that gave her the boost to be reminded that what she was doing was exciting and newsworthy. The more she talked about it to us, a third party, it gave her that boost. So as you can see on the screen, we were able to help her be featured on a national program called Harlem Globetrotters Play It Forward. This was on NBC. We also got her an interview on Smiley News, which is a news publication that focuses on positive stories. And then in the other corner, you'll see we helped her pitch her story to the Kelly Clarkson Show. And that was via a Hi Kelly video, they call it, which we shared with producers. So some media, they want to see you. They want to either see examples of where you've been before, how you speak, what you look like. They might look on your social media, as Rosemary pointed out, to get those examples. Or they might ask for a completely new video, a Hi Kelly video, they call it, which was 1 minute just talking about herself. So I'm just going to play for you her interview on Smiley News so you can see how she was able to get some coverage.
When a girl owns her body, she's the one who gets to make it feel beautiful. She can see what she can accomplish. Hi, I'm Abby. I'm the founding director of Groove With Me, a pre-dance school for girls in East Harlem. Our mission is to attract and engage the girls with free dance classes and build their self-confidence in an effort to prevent risk-taking behaviors like domestic abuse, prostitution, dropping out of school, depression.
Really makes people feel safe, happy. Groove With Me is a very educational and safe place for girls to put all their feelings into the dancing.
Of course, we need funding. We can have about 80 classes a week and go from serving 250 girls to 400. But we definitely need more dance teachers. In order to do that, we'll need 80 dance teachers. All of our girls graduate from high school and get admitted to college. One of our girls said that without us walking her through the application, she wouldn't have known how to get into college. When she was in college, it was hard to become independent, but she found her way to be independent because of her experience at Groove With Me. We're sort of that organization that takes the leap and hopes for the best.
So as you can see in that video, and you heard some of the messages that I was even talking about, how we positioned Abby, that was a video that actually was played on a news outlet online, and then Abby was able to share that. So I think what this exposure from all these different shows, whether it's a national show, whether it's online, whether it's just a pitch, we really want to show also the next step. So it doesn't end with just the media coverage. It's how she leveraged those appearances. So for example, the Harlem Globetrotters, you'll see an example. She posted that on social media. She did an email for a click to watch, letting all her followers on social media, as well as her friends on her email list, know that they should watch this show. She did then a viewing party after it aired to invite board members to the studio to meet and mingle with students and teachers to watch that program. So it really took on many, many legs. For many of these examples also, she included links to her appearances in her communications channels. She sent direct emails to her donors in her newsletter, and again, posting it to social media. So it's how you leverage, how you take that and use it to your advantage of where you go with, it doesn't stop with just that one coverage. So after we ended our work with Abby, she emailed us with some good news. She told us she was going to be in a segment on the Today Show, surprising Hoda, if you know Hoda Kotb, on the Today Show on the third hour with Jenna on her 60th birthday. And she said to us, and I'm quoting her, "Your magic is working even outside your pitches." Like 3 exclamation points. So I'm going to share with you that segment right now.
But a girl,
So you get to see how she is doing a live interview and how that works on a.
We are celebrating Hoda's 60th birthday. And earlier today, Hoda got a very special morning boost, a surprise performance by some girls who are near and dear to her. It's an organization called Groove With Me. Hoda, that was beautiful. There they were, they danced. Well, we have another surprise for you from the founder of Groove With Me, Abby McCree. Take a look.
dear Hoda, for your birthday, I hope you experience how much you are loved and the difference that you make in the lives of others. Without your compassion and generosity, we wouldn't be here. Groove With Me's mission is to instill in girls self-worth so they make good choices and have great futures. You've always understood. For 25 years, you've been touting their successes at every opportunity. 100% of Groove With Me girls graduate from high school and get into college. You changed their lives.
All right, girls, you ready?
In 2016, 5 girls performed on the Today Show. Each was going through an extraordinary challenge. One now has her master's. She says it was a visit by a college counselor to Groove With Me that directed her to follow her dream. One Sunday morning, you called me and said, "Next week, I'm bringing your girls to Philly to meet Michelle Obama." They called me that night overwhelmed with excitement, awe, and gratitude. You lit up their lives. Whenever we speak, you ask, "What do you need? What do you need?" That is who you are, and we do need you. You are one of our biggest supporters. You literally make it possible for Groove With Me to turn on the lights. For me personally, you have been the wind beneath my wings. Groove With Me is my dream, and it can be lonely and scary to have it depend on me. I know I can call you and you won't let me fail. I'm so honored to have you in my life. On behalf of myself and the thousands of girls and young women whose lives you've changed, thank you.
Oh, okay. Hoda, Abby's here. Abby, come on over. Abby, come on over. Sit here with us. Hoda, what do you want?
No, first of all, I just want you guys to know that you are sitting in the presence of greatness with Abby right here. Abby built this organization from literally nothing. You have changed, I don't know how many lives you've changed, and I got to witness it in real time. I mean, what I got out of this is I get to bear witness to the amazing work you guys do. So I'm just honored that you're here. And there's, if anyone wants to donate to the best organization in the world, please donate to Groove With Me. It is amazing.
mentioned Amani, who is also here
Where's
right
Amani?
in the audience. Her life has been changed. Hello. With me and by Hoda. Abby, you've already said a lot. That was a beautiful letter, but anything you want to just quickly say to Hoda?
Just so people acknowledge.
I'm not sure I was before time right now from my basement. Right.
I think the angels. For now. They speak.
Oh.
They come right through you and, you're very special.
Okay, I think Mike issues, I think it was just your hair. Well, and Hoda, we are so impressed with your creativity and your leadership. So I'm gonna do this in honor of Hoda. Manage multiple projects. We know you project manage so much, including a new studio and all of these things. So the folks at Project Management Institute want to support your mission of improving the lives of young people with a donation of $20,000. And on Megan's birthday.
Wait, it's a really good thing I didn't curse.
From all of us, we love you. Thank you.
I'll just stop it right there, just so we have enough time to get through. But you can see there were so many yes, that was a national program. That was big. Hoda Kotb, actually, they've had her on the show before. Hoda Kotb was a supporter, but this really gave Abby the confidence and the boost she needed to tell her story. And you could tell, she was tearing up. I was tearing up. She also had someone in the audience. They didn't get to talk to her, but that was a girl who had an alumni of the program. That's something very, very important for you as well. When you tell your stories, it's not only about you, it's about the people you serve, and to make sure that you have other people that you have supported, that you have helped in your program, be a spokesperson. So those were big national hits, as I said, but know that there are achievable coverage for you with local New York City media or media in your region. And they might not get $20,000 donation check coming, but they'll help you leverage your story so that you can tell it to your audience. With that, I will send it to Rosemary to give us some takeaways and finish up the program.
Thank you, Lara. So when I was listening to Abby, and I'm sorry to the participants that the audio wasn't better, but the Today Show was actually having some audio issues.
It was their audio, yes.
But if you heard Abby say, it's really lonely and scary because it's all on me. And that was a moment where she showed her vulnerability and where I really felt more connected to her. So I just wanted to point that out because it connected back to something I said earlier. I'm not going to repeat myself. I've already made these points throughout the presentation. I think it's very, very clear why we need to bring people into our narratives and why we need to be thinking about all the channels. And I was actually going to bring up Laura's question that she asked earlier in the chat, but I see she has another question. And actually, Lara, I don't know if she's asking for us to elaborate on the third bullet. I don't know if you want to talk about that, because Lara is our media maven at Rosecom, and she has incredible networking abilities and relationships, but she also gets home run media placements with people she's never met before. So maybe you can talk about that even if you don't have a Rolodex, I'll use another old term, of media contacts, you can still get attention.
Oh, definitely. And I think, there's so many clients that might come to us to say, well, who do you know? Who do you know? Who are the media that you work with, and who do you know? And I always like to say, it's not who I know, it's about finding that right person that fits with your story. And it is understanding. I will send out a link when we send our thank yous to everybody. I'm going to send a link to a blog post that I wrote a while ago, which probably needs to be refreshed, but it is about understanding the media, watching the TV shows, reading the magazines, we're reading the online magazines, reading newspapers, reading all of the channels that you want to pitch to in the media, and knowing what they cover. So for example, are you watching WPIX channel 11? And do you know that Monica Morales is the reporter who does all the volunteer segments? you might not know how to reach her, but you know that she's the person that would be the right fit for me. Or I've seen her do other interviews of similar organizations to mine. I'm going to call up the TV station and ask who is her producer, or how do I get in touch with her directly, or follow her on social media, and then you might be able to contact her that way. It is finding the right person, and also at the right time. I've worked with many journalists who said, "Oh, I literally was just researching that story. I can't believe you just emailed me. It's perfect." So it's looking at their past coverage, understanding what they're working on, who they interview that might be similar to you. So, like I said, I'll share that blog post with really give some tips and tools on how to keep up with traditional media, but new media as well. And it really is just being out there and knowing where to find the information.
And Laura also asked in the chat earlier when I was talking about the generosity crisis and some of the reasons that people are less inclined to give today than maybe people were historically. And I used the phrase write a check. I used it metaphorically, which she acknowledged that a lot of people aren't writing physical checks anymore, unless you're sitting on the Today Show and they're handing you a big check. And trust is a major concern for people when they are parting with their money. And Laura made a very good point that there are a lot of scams out there now, and people are very nervous about clicking on links. I've been seeing just in the last few days a proliferation of scams based on QR codes. And I know nonprofits also rely on QR codes, whether it's on a sign at an event or on your collateral materials. That's a great way to take people straight to your donate page on your website. And now there are scammers out there. I just saw one this morning where they're taking a sticker and putting it on existing QR codes, and you can't even really see it. And then it makes it not work. And it says you can go directly to this other website to give, and you're entering your financial information in the wrong website. So I agree that that's a real problem. And I think I'm not a development expert, I'm a communication strategist. So there maybe are development people who would have, and maybe even some of the people on this call who would have ideas on ways to make sure people feel confident giving to your organization based on the link that they're clicking on. I will say that the trust that you create, the third-party credibility of getting media outlets and other influencers to talk about you just helps. It builds that authority and that credibility in your organization, so people are more likely to trust that they're giving to someone who will make good use of the money. And then hopefully they won't just click on a random link that they see somewhere. They are looking at your website and they are making sure that they're giving through that trusted platform. If you are using a third-party platform, I know some of the nonprofits I'm involved with use GiveButter, and people seem to trust GiveButter. They know if they're clicking on a peer-to-peer giving campaign from a social media push, for example. We haven't run into any issues with that, but this is definitely something to keep an eye on and to make sure that we are looking for every opportunity we have to build that trust with people and make sure that they know they can feel safe giving to us. And that's a lot of that is about giving them lots of different ways to give and giving them ways to get in touch with us if they have questions. But that's a big concern, and the scams are changing all the time. We're almost done, but I do want to just make a couple points here about the changing media landscape. Think about your audience and who it is that is the gatekeeper for that particular audience. Something we've seen in 2024 with the presidential election, we saw podcasts become enormously influential. We put a lot of our clients on podcasts, so there are many out there. It's not a new medium. It's been around for a while, and it's certainly not particularly innovative in the way it is produced, but just really stopping and thinking about all the different ways your audiences are getting information and how you might be able to tap into those. Also thinking about the way generative AI is changing how people learn about your organization. We see that the tools have gotten much smarter, thinking about where they're pulling information from. They're pulling from press releases, websites, news coverage, Wikipedia pages. You might want to stop and ask AI to write a story about your nonprofit and see what it says, because that is how people are getting a lot of information today. And just make sure that you're thinking through that part of it and that you're putting the right accurate narrative out there to feed that algorithm, because that's how a lot of journalists and other people are going to be learning about you, is through that AI generated content. And then, as I've said a couple times already, making sure your own house is in order. Is your website current? Are your social media channels telling your best story? Don't save your best stories for pitching to the media. Make sure that they are everywhere, even on your LinkedIn and the leadership of your nonprofit's LinkedIn pages. I think that does it for us. And I know we don't have a ton of time, but if there are additional questions, happy to answer them. You can raise a hand or put it into the chat.
And please follow us. There's our website where you reach us directly, and our social media as well that you can reach out to us.